Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a very wintry Venice morning here at the Palazzo Diedo. I'm Nathan Gardels, the co-founder of the Berggruen Institute and an editor of Noema Magazine. Today, I'm just going to take a few minutes to frame today's theme, Planetary Realism. But first, let me just say a couple words about Noema Magazine. You see in the bookstore the beautiful annual print edition of Noema, but you can follow the discourse on Noema on an ongoing basis online if you just Google Noema Magazine, because we have a lot of stuff that goes on between the annual issues, so be sure you take a look at that. So, as was discussed yesterday, I think most of you were here yesterday, the condition of the planetary is grounded in an awareness that we humans are not the center of it all, but only one part of the Earth's self-regulating and self-maintaining ecosystem. The climate challenge is a window onto this broader condition which repositions the place of modern humans in the natural order. This disclosure of a non-human centric logos is one consequence of the advent of artificial intelligence, and through planetary scale computation, vastly expands the heretofore limited scope of human understanding of whole Earth systems. We are only aware of climate change, for example, through this way. As Benjamin Bratton put it yesterday, only when intelligence becomes artificial and can be scaled into massive, distributed systems beyond the narrow confines of biological organisms can we have a knowledge of the planetary systems in which we live. This emergent exoskeleton of sensors, satellites, clouds, and networks that span the Earth constitute the rudiments of a common cognizant sphere that lays the ground for what Bratton calls planetary sapience. Now, this condition entails a shift from the concept of globalization, when markets, trade, and technology cross borders, to the planetary. In the planetary concept, the borders cross us, embedding and entangling human civilization in its habitat. This conceptual shift, in turn, entails a redefinition of what realism means in geopolitics. Planetary realism is the practical manifestation of these new understandings. It departs from the old realist or realpolitik school of foreign policy that regards nation-states as the principal actors on the world stage, engaged in an endless struggle against others in pursuit of securing their own interest. Reality these days dictates another kind of realism when it comes to the convergence of critical common challenges that are beyond the scope of remedy by any one nation or bloc of nations. As the Earth's biosphere cascades towards unlivable conditions, it is now incontestably evident that the security of each depends inextricably on the other. In short, what is called for now is not a nation-state realpolitik, but a planetary geopolitik. This conceptual leap, however, far from being reflected in the present political temper, is going in the other direction toward a revived nationalism. Indeed, one of the great paradoxes of the moment is that even as the planetary imperative is apparent, mitigating climate change has become the province of renewed nationalism. Industrial policies designed to make green energy transition are competing to protect and promote national interests instead of joining together at the level of all humanity. Rather than uniting as a threatened species to meet the challenge that knows no boundaries, competition has sidelined collaboration among Western nations, and global warming has been weaponized in the Cold War with China. So one can sensibly regard these Venice deliberations as untimely meditations. In short, the political zeitgeist is out of sync with the planetary imperative. Of course, and Niels mentioned this yesterday, this does not mean the dissonant role of philosophy to go against the grain of political immediacy and insist on inconvenient truths. Sooner or later, these truths have to be unavoidably recognized because reality demands no less. The conundrum is how to get from here to there and get there in time. This brings us to the politics of planetary realism. Planetary realism has a double meaning here. It entails both a recognition of the interdependence of the planetary condition, as well as a realistic grasp of what it will take to navigate through what remains a world of nation-states. Here is where the notions of subsidiarity, subnational networks of the willing, a partnership of rivals, multi-alignment, multi-partnerships, and green nationalism come into play, which we'll discuss during the course of the day. Now, to take the case I know best as a participant is California. California already has experience with subnational cooperation on climate during the Trump administration last time. Despite the US pulling out of the Paris Accord, then Governor Jerry Brown strengthened the state's relationship with Chinese provinces and at the level of the Chinese leadership on common decarbonization approaches, including aligning the markets of our carbon trading, the metrics of our carbon trading markets, so one day they could be integrated. Earlier this year, the China-California Climate Institute, co-chaired by Jerry Brown and the former top climate official in China, Xie Zhenhua, had 200 Chinese climate scientists over to San Francisco to plot further cooperation. California's breed of subnational statesmen has continued with the present governor, Gavin Newsom. Last spring, he toured China's provinces where clean energy development and climate mitigation are most advanced. He met with Chinese President Xi Jinping and others to update already environmental cooperation agreements with California and initiate new ones. For China's part, it recognizes that the Pacific-facing Golden State, California, with a population of 40 million people, is nearly a nation unto itself. As the fifth largest economy in the world, the state's public policies shape the huge market of California with standards that in turn infect the entire United States, especially when it comes to emission controls, electric vehicle mandates, and decarbonizing technologies. Now, the US and China may well survive the decoupling of their economies from each other, but as Governors Brown and Newsom have understood, the world would not survive the decoupling of climate cooperation between the two largest greenhouse gas emitters on the planet. Divorce is not an option, Governor Newsom said in Beijing. Despite all the tensions between the two incommensurate political systems, what the governor called the fundamental and foundational climate summons must bind the two together in partnerships despite rivalry in other realms. This climate cooperation manifests the idea of a partnership of rivals. Now, California is just one case among many where translocalism can circumnavigate geopolitics. We don't have to wait for the nation state, as cumulative causation can move the needle forward. One saving grace of climate, if I might put it that way, is that as a distributed reality, it can be addressed in distributed ways. On this distributed front, let's not forget the role of the market and what it will inevitably play as climate reality literally hits people's homes. The newly empowered political establishment in the US may not believe in climate change, but the nerdy actuaries of the insurance companies certainly do. Knowing that they have to cope with California fires, Greek fires, Florida floods, floods in Valencia. They know that they are on the way to bankruptcy without climate mitigation. In some way, they are a vanguard, certainly an ally. Finally, one cannot ignore the real-world effects of the rise of green nationalism. I mentioned before this idea of green nationalism. Recently, Giorgia Meloni argued that Italy must advance effective climate policies both as a job creator and as a key way to keep migrants from fleeing north as climate refugees. At the COP meeting in Azerbaijan, Viktor Orban touted Hungary as positioning itself for economic growth and new job creation by being a significant player in electric vehicle development and electricity storage. And unlike the rest of the Western nations, he intends to do so in cooperation with China to leverage the prowess of its green technologies. Its green technologies. In the US, it is entirely conceivable that Elon Musk can sell the climate denier-in-chief, Donald Trump, on the need for a robust electric vehicle industry as a way to stay ahead of China. And big tech, for the same reason, can sell him on revival of non-fossil fueled nuclear industry to power its data centers. On the face of it, all this may seem a fatal fragmentation, but there may be another way we are compelled to look at it. We have the legitimacy framework we have, the nation state, not the one we wish we have. To the extent proximity is legitimacy in the subsidiarity schema, green nationalism is beginning to appear as the most politically organic way to move forward at this historic juncture. Now, two other quick observations before I finish on the politics of planetary realism. First, the mounting green lash. This new element of a green lash, of a backlash against green policies, was registered in recent elections, not just in the US, but here in Europe and across the West. It portends a social resistance that is more about resentment of self-righteous Tesla driving elites and the unequally borne cost of the energy transition than climate denial. The Diet Coke imaginary of environmentalists who framed climate policies as achievable without undue burden on economies that were built on fossil fuels for over a century has been put to rest. As the heavy lift of the transition bites even more deeply into the daily bread, we are beginning to learn the hard lesson that the future has a scarce constituency in consumer democracies as well as growth-obsessed autocracies. If we don't have policies that buffer and equalize the burden of the transition, it will stall. Second, within the planetary awareness, there is a tension between those who see technology as part of the solution and deep ecologists who distrust technology and see it as a problem, as the problem. They suspect it is a substitute for the political will to act that only sustains the addiction while deepening the underlying affliction. As I noted at the outset, this is misguided in the sense that planetary scale computation is what allows the limited understanding of humans to grasp the workings of Earth's natural systems in the first place. Aligning human technological prowess with natural systems instead of against them is a necessary part of the equation. Anthropotechnogenesis got us into this mess. It can help get us out. It portends, as some have called it, the good Anthropocene. At the same time, technology is not a silver bullet. The temptation to deify technology as the ultimate solution, as so-called tech accelerationists are prone to do, risk mirroring the mistake of deep ecologists to resist its promise. Any effort to repair planetary deformation through technology cannot be effective if it is solely focused on cutting downstream emissions or adapting to the consequences of climbing temperatures. Here, the perspective of deep ecology still resonates. We are only buying time if we don't address what drives the system, the upstream consumption that turns every want into a need that can only be satisfied through a net increase in the use of planetary warming energy. In the end, what we don't do is as much a part of planetary realism as what we do. So thank you for your attention, and now we're going to move to the panel that will discuss these issues. Thank you very much.